I said yes instead of saying no, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think having an open mind and just, hey, let's look at this as an opportunity to see
Mm-hmm.
where it goes. The director that actually hired me at this company went on to work at Disney.
Well, welcome to our debut podcast here. I'm Eric Michael Cap, your host at the Gold Street Creative Pro podcast, and super excited to have in the studio as our first guest somebody I've known for, 3 or 4 years, I think,
It's been a little
that,
while.
that we've worked with professionally on a number of great animated dubbing projects for Health Nuts Media, Aetna, Boston Children's Hospital, Rady's Children's Hospital, Committee for Children, and on and on. And that is the incredible Jules Jaselle. Thanks for joining us, Jules.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming and just taking time out of your busy schedule. So let me just read a little bit from your bio here because it's pretty impressive. Originally from San Francisco and now residing in Los Angeles, Jules Jaselle has been a professional voice actor and singer for 20 years and coach for over 15. Some happy and repeat clients include Disney, Mattel, Leapfrog, Sony, Sega, Universal Music UK, Nickelodeon, Columbia Pictures, Netflix, and American Girl, to name a few. She has also done multiple national ad campaigns for well-known companies such as McDonald's, Target, Gliss Hair Repair, Subway, Levi's, Men's Warehouse, Walmart, iTunes, and Pepsi. She's done video games such as Knight's Journey of Dreams, Dora the Explorer, Scooby-Doo, Tomb Raider, Infinite Space, the list goes on and on. That's all part of her incredible body of work. In 2017, Jules joined the casting and production side, launching a company specializing in foreign language casting and translation services, and currently manages production in 5 languages for the children's animated series Choo Choo TV. Did I say that right?
Yes.
All right. So over the years, she has trained and developed numerous voice artists for narration and explainer videos, audiobooks, toys, commercials, e-learning, video games, animated web series, and has gone on to book projects with companies such as Disney, Pixar, Leapfrog, Netflix, and everything in between. And I've got a little quote here: with the growth of the casting and production companies, it brings great pleasure to guide and develop talented artists and help them discover their niche in order to provide them with opportunities that can put that niche to work successfully. So that's kind of the mission statement, I guess. Vision.
Yes.
Fantastic. So, Jules,
Yes.
that's your bio. But before you started in the business, tell us how you got into voiceover and a little bit of your background story.
Sure. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in a town called Fremont, which is just south, about 30 minutes south of San Francisco. Humble means. A single parent, was raised by my mom. And at a really early age, I want to say I was in 3rd grade, I just had this natural calling and love for music and singing, and this was definitely before voiceover came into the picture. It was singing. And I just loved it so much. I didn't see it as, oh, I'm gonna be a singer. It was just like, oh, I love doing this. And a funny story is, in the 3rd grade, I remember us, in order to be in the choir, you had to have a certain GPA average in
Right.
the class.
Yeah.
And so I really strived to make sure that I was able to, have a few hours taken out of the day once or twice a week to be able to go practice. And it was a boy and a girl of each class. Now, I made it, and it was just like the highlight of my day whenever I would get to go and sing. And it wasn't about singing solo. It was just something in me needed to do that.
Right.
The boy in my class sat next to me, and as we were practicing and singing, he says to me, "Wow, you're really good." And I'm like, "Shh, don't say anything."
Was that the first person, like outside of your
Yes.
family, who affirmed you.
Yes.
Great.
So he went and told the teacher. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. And she asks me to stay after school. And I was like, uh-oh, here I go. I'm in trouble. I was like, oh no. So I stayed after school and she asks me to sing along, with the boy. His name was Hugo. And
Hugo.
And so I just sang, just a bit of something I don't even remember. But it was at that very moment that she actually said, wow, you are really good. That weekend, she came over with her husband to talk to my mom saying, we don't know how to help guide you, but we would like to support in finding like a voice lesson for her. She's really good. And we don't know if you knew how good she was, but we'd like to support you. And it was then that they helped find me a voice coach. They even helped pay for it. It was something where it was just the community believed so much in my talent and my gifts that obviously my mom couldn't afford classes to a degree.
And this was a regular public school, or was this?
This was a regular public school.
Just a regular public school.
Regular
a teacher
public
who
school.
had some vision and was willing to actually pay for your lessons.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
What
was her name?
Miss Castaneda.
Wow.
Yeah. So her and her husband came, and that was kind of like the beginning of everything. Obviously, by the time and that finale of the year, she put together a program and a show, and that was the first solo that I had, and it was Singing What the World Needs Now.
Right.
And it was then that I got bit by the bug. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Now, as time went on, I started taking more classes, taking music classes and things like that. By the time I got to junior high, that was when I started auditioning for, particular projects and things like that.
Music or voice?
Music related. So voiceover came after the music recording contract. I had auditioned for a girl group when I was 13 at this point.
In the Bay Area?
In the Bay Area. But they would fly us to Los Angeles. So some of the girls were in LA, some were in New York. And so, but the work would happen and the recording would happen here.
So like a teen pop. Mixed.
Exactly. Like a mixed array of girls, and we were called Fifth Power. We launched in the Spanish market first.
Oh, interesting.
And then, then we had essentially were to cross over. But it was that record deal that really kind of opened my eyes to the business side of things. I signed the deal and, started traveling a lot. They would fly us to Miami. We would do tours. We would do presentations. It was a big radio campaign. We were on the radio all the time. It was one of the, I would say it's an unbelievable feeling to have when you're just in passing at that age. And you're, obviously I'm in San Francisco at this point, but crossing the Golden Gate Bridge and the radio is playing your song. And I'm like, was that, a CD that
was... This is in Spanish.
In Spanish, yes. Yes, it was on the Spanish side first. So it was a lot of amazing things that were taking place at a very early age. As a lot of stories happen, things with management and the record company started going a bit south.
Right. Yeah.
And I started.
Business, folks.
It was a different kind of perspective. And in coming back from the promotional tour that we had done, it was at that point where I was like, I don't think I want to do anything related in music anymore. So I was kind of very disheartened and just, disappointed. I was so just really heartbroken that this was my first love, my first passion as far as what I wanted to do when I came back. And it was just left a very bittersweet kind of experience where it was, yes, I love what I'm doing, but there were other aspects to it that made me, was a little tough.
And it is, yeah.
Now, that experience coming out of that is how voiceover came into my world, where and I'll say this a million times, that sometimes the work chooses you, you don't choose it, or the craft chooses you, you know what I mean? And it's up to us to kind of do what we're going to do with it. Now, when I came back, I was super depressed. I had a friend of mine, her name was Sally, and she comes over with, a little care package to cheer me up because I was not leaving the house. I was so depressed. I was like, I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to do anything. Leave me alone.
We all need a Sally in our lives.
So she comes over with a flyer. And on the flyer, it was basically an audition for a voiceover gig, which I had no clue what voiceover was at this point, by the way. I'm a singer. I'm a vocalist. So she hands me the flyer, and on the flyer it had like a short excerpt of a script, and they needed someone that could speak Spanish. And obviously I'm fluent in English and Spanish. And so she's like, here, call. You just call and leave a message on this recorded machine. Wow.
That was before like email and the internet and online auditions.
Yeah. And it was kind of just strange to me. I'm like, what? This is weird. And it was just a basic, you leave this message, we'll call you back.
Right.
So I didn't want to do it, and she forced me, She puts the phone, she called it, she's like, go. I was like, I'm going to kill you. I didn't want to do it. So I call, I leave the message, and then, it was whatever. I didn't think anything else of it. I left my information. I believe that was a Thursday, and the weekend had passed, the next few days had passed, and I get a call from this company, and they were called The Learning Company at the time. So now I had no idea what I was going out for. I had no idea what voiceover was. I get a call, and they ask me to come in to their offices. Now, when I went in, I didn't get that particular job because they needed a voice that sounded older. They wanted like a teacher kind of tone. But they kept bringing me in. And finally, to read, like, I want to say 2 months later, I was booking, like, I was there 3-4 times a week, sometimes after school, just recording. So my intro and gain of experience in voiceover came where it hey, music didn't work in the way that you wanted, but here now there's this. Try this on for size and see how this works.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, very similar story. You follow your passion, and mine was music as well. And you're proficient at it. Obviously, somebody thought you were good at it, but then the opportunity knocks in an area that may not have been what you thought it was, but it's still audio related. It still allows you to be creative.
Right.
You're still using your voice.
Right.
And you can still pursue music. There's nothing to stop you from doing that on the side. But that was the door that opened. So what happened from there? How did you go from, this first series of jobs to that bio that we read at the beginning of the show, and all of these incredible jobs? Because, I'm sure there are a lot of aspiring, voiceover people who may be listening going, I would love to get that break. How do I get into the voiceover business? How do I make a demo? Where do I start? How do I develop my craft? All those type of things.
So it's definitely a process, and there's no like particular formula. Each person's story is different. This happened to be mine, but I think the lesson that I took as far as what worked for me that I could say is something that I would suggest people to do is that even the voiceover, I had no clue what it was. I went in unknowing. It was just like, here, try this, and even though I was kind of hesitant in the beginning, after a while I was like, hey, this is kind of fun. This is kind of cool. I'm still doing what I love. It's just under a different umbrella, right? So I said yes instead of saying no, right? So, I think having an open mind and just, hey, let's look at this as an opportunity to see where it goes. The director that actually hired me at this company went on to work at Disney. Now, the next thing that I would say, being open-minded, is creating your relationship with whoever hires you. Like, I've always known this, I think, even as as a young child, that it's in, say you hire me for this particular project. I want to do the best job that I can, but ultimately I want us to build a rapport and a relationship that that need be in the future. If something happens, I got you. I can come back and take care of it.
It's amazing, because I've been doing this for 20 years, and we've worked with some of the best, most talented people in LA, and great demos, great reads, great bios, but it's amazing how many people don't pay attention to the human relationship side.
Right.
Because there are times where I don't even have to send a read to the client. I can pick. So who am I going to pick? I'm going to pick the person. Obviously, they have to be good at what they're doing and be able to deliver. But then after that, who do I enjoy working with? Who do I have the best experience with? Who do I have a rapport with? Yeah. And it's probably the person who's made some effort, whether it's and I've got postcards in the mail from people saying thank you and all that type of stuff, and that's great. But that personal relationship is so important, because like you said, you never know where that person's going to be. You don't. Maybe it's a small job, but maybe that person ends up being creative director somewhere, or casting director for like Disney or what amazing. It was. Exactly.
Right, and I think that really separates those who really do find true success is that in my opinion, my humble opinion, it's really about, the greater good of the project in its entirety. I've always kind of operated from an ego-free place. In other words, I don't have this elitist mentality that I'm the best at everything, because I know I don't book everything, but that's okay. I'm not trying to be all things to all people. I'm just trying to be the best version of what I know I can do and provide a service to help alleviate anyone else's concerns, and in some cases, put out fires. Sometimes there's emergencies that I'll get it done. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. And I just have just say yes. Here's the thing. I think what I usually tell like the people that I coach, not everything is going to be the biggest job opportunity. You kind of have to work your way up there. You can't go in thinking you're this amazing artist, and maybe you are, and I'm not taking away from anyone who feels that way. I think having confidence is important. But at the end of the day, it's about the work, for me at least. And what I try to instill in people that are getting, started, is to have an understanding is like, just get in front of a microphone as much as you can. Even if it pays $20 or if it's volunteer, practice your craft. Get it to a place where it's so second nature, you don't have to think about it. That's how you get to the next level.
So let's talk about that process. So how did you develop your craft in terms of your ability to voice these different characters, like the Dora Explorer and all these different people? How did you get from, say, corporate stuff or whatever, business reads, to the really fun, creative stuff on the animated series and games?
Right. It's definitely a bit of vocal acrobatics and having a chameleon personality type, I think. A huge thing for me, I think having a background in music did wonders, because it built my ear to be able to really listen to intonations and voice matching from time to time. If there's a character that you're trying to really, match as closely as you can, but ultimately practicing over and over and over. I was lucky to find, the people at the Learning Company and the director, who happened to be Ned Lott at the time, who went on to Disney. Now we're still good friends, and I just had lunch with him last week. They took me under their wing. They saw something and believed in a potential of like, okay, even though at that time I didn't really know the ins and outs of certain techniques, but I grew and I was just a sponge. I was so eager to learn that it just kind of happened in a way. What I will say, switching from explainer videos to the character driven type things, be it animation or video games and things like that, it definitely is acting. Like you have
Right.
to have an acting technique, understand and a basic understanding or a foundation of acting.
So at what time did you start? I'm assuming you went and took some kind of acting lessons and,
Right.
and got a coach. And
Before voiceover, at that time where singing came into the picture, I was acting. I was on screen acting before I was even doing voiceover.
Right,
So the combination of the vocal technique and understanding breath techniques and just basic health and maintenance of your instrument so that you can do all these different things is super important. I would say, studying as much as you can of your own capabilities and finding the formulas that work for you so that you can, create a process, so to speak, that when you do get a piece of copy, and as we all know, it's usually cold. Like we don't always have rehearsals
right.
in voiceover. It's like, here, now go. In order to really execute that on a level where you're like, okay, 1, 2 takes and we're good, right? It's building and honing that strength in that muscle. It's a muscle memory thing that can only happen over the course of repetition.
Right.
So if I were to give any advice on someone trying to get in and learn, and, if your goal is like, I want to be on video games,
Right.
I suggest taking even an improv class, vocal technique, because that's the combination of what you're going to need to use
Right.
when you're being directed. It's truthfully acting, and I think that's one of the common things that people ask. Oh, so it's like acting? I'm like, no, honey, it is acting.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you need to understand that voiceover, just because the physicality element is not present as far as they don't see us usually. We're behind a microphone.
Well, obviously we record here, and I see, and I have
Right.
certain artists who are more animated than others, and they really get in, especially when we're doing the animation dubs we do, they really get into the character. Their arms are moving.
Right.
They're like, like what you see on the screen. They kind of mimic what that person
Right.
is doing, and
Right.
they get into that character. So let me ask you this. Are there any kind of, let's say, routines, pre-voice recording routines that you go through? Let's say you're about to record something. Let's say it's at your home studio, so you don't have to be there. Is there a series of steps that you typically do to get your voice and your body and your mind ready to record and deliver what the client
absolutely.
wants?
Yes. Well, I have my trusty throat coat tea.
Right, yeah, we've got some here always.
My trusty throat coat tea, my green grainy apples, those are my little go-tos as far as like, okay, they're gonna help support what I'm about to do.
Yeah,
But
those
most
are
importantly
mouth
are
noise.
exactly mouth noise, especially for longer sessions, as
Oh,
you know.
yes.
All
Yeah,
the clickies.
please, to have some tea or
Yeah.
or the apple, because
Right.
cleaning that up can be a little
It's not fun.
monotonous on a long project.
No. And the other part, if not, most importantly, and even if I don't have a session, I still do them, are vocalises, vocal scales. Now, you don't necessarily have to do all of them that are pertaining and specific to singing, but like the lip trills, just really connecting from a place and support from your diaphragm, knowing your breath technique and doing it properly over and over on a consistent basis. Because if you do want to go into animation and go into the efforts that come along with video games, and for those that don't know what efforts are, it's the screaming at the top of your lungs. You just, got thrown off a cliff, or, you're yelling at someone, grenade,
That takes a lot.
It does. It's very vocally strenuous. And I've known people that have had to go on vocal rest because they've had injuries.
Wow.
You can get a vocal hemorrhage. You can get an injury that might feel like, oh, I'm coming down with something, but really it's a tear, or it's something that could affect the longevity of your career. And you need to be very, very aware and careful of that.
Right.
It's not like a string on a guitar that you can go out and just replace it. Your voice is not replaceable. You need to find as many preventative things as possible.
So how do you communicate that when you're in a session and the director says, can give me, take 20 of that scream because we need it more like, I need it to tail off this way. I mean, what tips do you have for working with producers and directors and end clients? Mm-hmm. Obviously, you want to give them what they want, but you also have to, communicate that, okay, I've got to have a break here. I've got to, I may not be able to do any more of the screams if you want me to get through the rest of this copy, or maybe we come back to that at the end.
Right. That's actually a really good question. And usually what I do when I'm in a session of that caliber, where it's just like, okay, we got to really work this muscle today. We save those things for the end or closest to the end so that it doesn't affect or color the dialogue and take away from the consistency that needs to have. And we do time it. But again, to do those things, that's vocal technique for the usage of singing and learning to belt properly and to be able to withstand and sustain that level of performance to where you don't hurt yourself or lose your voice, because that can easily happen if you don't do it correctly.
Right.
But definitely pacing yourself. I would say if you have a really strong understanding of vocal breathing for proper usage of that, you'll be able to handle those things.
Right. And what type of, in terms of your limits, because sometimes, and I'm sure, if you're working with somebody who's inexperienced as a producer or director or client, they may not understand that, you have a certain period of time that you're going to be able to record.
Right.
You're going to need regular breaks and rest, but after 2 or 3 hours, that's probably it for the day. What's your kind of limit and rest kind of break?
Yeah, I mean,
needs,
I think, well, for myself personally, I've been doing it for so long, I have a higher limit of endurance, but that's because the muscle is strong now. Right. It's like an athlete, you don't go run a marathon and just say, show up, oh, I decided to go run the marathon. No, you prepare. But realistically, just for my own health and sanity, I do pace myself, in a realistic way. And, if there is a break that's needed or a quiet moment where, okay, I just need to not say anything for a few minutes, have my tea, maybe go out, get some air. Because there's been sessions where they're so lengthy, you do have to kind of clear your mind a bit and then just kind of reset and regroup and come back. But if it's a vocally intense session of that nature, and most, like I said, most film and video games can really push those limits. Right. Definitely, I would say max 4 hours, and even that's kind of a bit much. 3 might be it. And if there's anything that we need to come back for, then we'll have to come back. That's just realistic in order to keep the continuity, especially if it's a lead character. Right. Games like Tomb Raider and, those battle games, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of vocally strenuous things that you have to be prepared for. It's not, you don't just show up and do it and then wonder why you can't talk anymore. Right. And now you can't do the session the next day.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tune in next week as we continue with part 2 of our interview with voiceover actress and coach, Jaselle. Please take a minute to subscribe and share so that we can grow this podcast and reach and help more people just like you. I'm Eric Michael Kapp, signing off for the Gold Street Creative Pro Podcast. Have a blessed week.